TV. Hey gamers, this is Ed Park, aka Taugrim, bringing you my video on the 4631 DPS PVP spec for Vanguard and Powertech. The spec features very strong burst damage and sustained damage mechanics. In this Alderaan match, I was Valor Rank 52 running with 8 pieces of champion gear, and you put 31 points in the right hand tree to get the Burge and Sursen proc reset cooldown talents, and you also want to pick up this talent for the 3% always on tech crit chance buff, and the talents in the shield tree, the tanking tree, to give you maximum damage on your high impact bolt or rail shot. So it's always important to counter opponents. This Juggernaut charges me, starts his channeled Ravage, which I interrupt with my melee ability Riot Strike. It is off the global cooldown, and you want to open up with your incendiary round or missile and then follow that up with a high impact bolt or rail shot. If you cast them in this order, if you get your target dotted first, then your high impact bolt or rail shot will only cost you 1 ammo or 8 heat. And it's important because the incendiary cast is very expensive. It costs 3 ammo or 25 heat, so you want to keep your ammo high or your heat low by using the appropriate resource management tools that we have. So one thing that I noticed here, we've already capped 2 nodes, so I'm typing in chat here to discourage people from going to try to take the east node. I've seen a lot of matches lost because the team that has 2 nodes tries to reach for the 3rd node, doesn't cap it, and then loses one of the other 2 nodes that they already have. So, don't get greedy unless you know you can take all 3. One really nice feature of this spec is that, aside from the damage dealt from the high impact bolt or rail shot, the majority of the other damage dealt is elemental. So both dots are elemental as well as our spammable 10 meter nuke. So it does help to make targets feel relatively equally squishy. I go ahead and drop my mortar volley, and while I'm channeling, I'm panning the camera to get the lay of the land to find out what other opponents are coming, and I spot one other Sith Inquisitor on the way. So, in general, obviously, you don't want to attack tanks because they have high mitigation. In the first fighting we had at the middle node, both of my opponents, Silent and Crowley, are tank specs, Juggernaut and Powertech, so I know they're very durable. But obviously in other situations you want to try not to fire a tank unless there's a good reason to do so. That being said, because of the high elemental damage mechanics from this class, we do hit all opponents pretty hard. So here I pop my AoE stun, follow it with the conal AoE. It's a good way to use them in that order to both peel for friendly players and healers, and then also make sure that more ticks of your conal AoE land before they get out of it. So I try to channel mortar volley whenever I see there's a potential to hit 2 or more targets. In that case, I only really got 1 target, but it's worth using aggressively in my opinion. I'm heading back to west to check up on it, and Crowley, the Battlemaster Powertech, is making his way up the platform, and I make sure to dot him up as soon as possible and go ahead and throw a taunt on him. Now, taunts are off the global cooldown, and in my opinion, you really should be making as much use of them as possible, even as a DPS, because it shouldn't hurt your DPS. It's just an extra key press. I actually don't do it to the extent that I should have in this video, and you'll see here as I'm running, I'm constantly panning the camera to make sure that no opponents are flanking me. To really gain the maximum single target burst damage and sustained damage in the spec, it requires watching for resets of the cooldown for high impact bolt or rail shot. And the easiest way you can tell if you have your ability lined up with other ones is when you cast an ability that can reset it. So either your melee ability or spammable 10 meter range nuke. If you see the global cooldown, the line on all your abilities match the line on your high impact bolt or rail shot, then you know the cooldown has been reset. So here's an interesting situation. There's a stealth enemy opponent who's not opening up. He actually waits too long to engage here. He should have, in my opinion, opened up on me now, so they would have had a 2 versus 1, but instead he joins the fight late enough that instead of having a 2 versus 1 advantage, he's now at a 1 versus 2 advantage. So he waited too long to come out of stealth. That's a tactical mistake, in my opinion. And the interesting thing about the specs is that we don't really have much in the way of mitigation talents, actually really no mitigation talents and no shield mechanic or those types of things to improve your survivability, and this spec really focuses on surviving with all-out offense. And here you can see I peel to protect a friendly player. I notice that that enemy player is an assassin, it's a melee, so I pull him away from the target that he was on to reduce his usage of his global cooldowns on a select target. So as I said earlier, taunts are off the global cooldown. There's no reason not to use them even if you're a DPS spec. And while you're in this spec, you typically run your plasma cell or combustible gas cylinder for the proc dot effect. While that's the case and you can't guard, you can still protect your friendlies with your taunts and appeal for friendlies by using your ranged pulls and your stun abilities. So it's important to take a look at the opponents that you're fighting and figure out what you need to counter them. So I know this person might sprint, I pull him back immediately, and I'm anticipating the stealth. So as soon as he stealths, I go ahead and use my stealth scan, get him out of stealth, and continue attacking and applying pressure to him. And then when his stealther here jumps me, I go ahead and use my range stun to make sure that this opponent doesn't get away and we burn him down. That's one of the things I enjoy the most about the Vanguard Powertech class. We do have some nice counters between our 2 stuns at higher levels as well as our ranged pull. And while this spec doesn't have a charge capability, which you would have if you had points in the tank tree, it does have very good offensive range capability. The right hand tree for Pyrotech and Vanguard does have the best range capability of the 3 trees. The main things to be aware for this spec, you don't have a gap closer or an in-combat run buff. We can short-range kite players pretty sustainably by using your 10-meter nuke, which will apply the 50% snare given from your dot capability from the plasma cell or combustible gas cylinder. So I go ahead and dot up a target with incendiary round and then follow up here. I use a reserve power cell and go ahead and start getting a free mana cast ability and nuking with mortar volley. Another example of peeling, I know this guy's an enemy melee, I pull him away from the target he's beating on and begin to attack him. And again, I really should be taunting here, no reason not to, it's off the global cooldown, it won't hurt my DPS a bit. Now, as I showed at the beginning of this video, this was at fairly low Valor rank, I was rank 52, this was shortly after I hit level 50, but even with a non-full set of level 50 PVP gear, you can put out some pretty good damage. I just got a 3800 crit there from a high impact boulder rail shot, and this enemy player here makes the mistake of making himself, putting himself inside my line of sight and in range, so I go ahead and pull him down so that we can burn him down, send him back up to his res point. If you keep doing this and keep people split up, the opponents, they can never get the critical mass to push on a node meaningfully. So this is a pretty short match. I queued solo and ended up here with a friendly guild healer. It's a very one-sided match and I finished top some damage. If you play the spec at 50, especially in a pre-made context and with the longer matches in SWTOR, you can easily crank out 400 plus 1000 damage. If you're looking for more SWTOR content, check out my blog Taugrim.com, and I'm streaming live footage with commentary on Twitch. Let me know what you think of this video and please subscribe. Take care.
Game Breaker TV.